Good afternoon. My name is Adrienne Arsht, founder of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center and Executive Vice Chair of the Atlantic Council. Thank you all for joining us, particularly those who are here in person at the Atlantic Council, including Mexican Ambassador to the U.S., Esteban Montezuma, and U.S. Ambassador to Mexico, Ken Salazar. Thank you as well to all those tuning in on C-SPAN and Telemundo and NTN24 for covering the event. Today, we are pleased to be hosting a conversation with Mexico's newly confirmed Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Alicia Bárcena. Secretary Bárcena, thank you for choosing the Atlantic Council for making your public remarks in Washington. We are delighted to have you here. Secretary Bárcena is in Washington, D.C. as part of the first official trip to the United States. Having previously served as Executive Secretary of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, and more recently, Ambassador of Mexico in Chile, Secretary Bárcena brings years of experience, she's very young, and knowledge to her new position. She also spent time as Undersecretary General for Management at the United Nations headquarters in New York and as chef de cabinet to former Secretary General Kofi Annan. Secretary Bárcena cares deeply about environmental matters, serving as coordinator of the Latin American and Caribbean Sustainable Development Program of the United Nations Development Program, and she founded the Earth Council in Costa Rica. In December of last year, the United States and Mexico celebrated 200 years of bilateral relations. In those years, our countries have supported each other with economic, social, political, and cultural ties. Today, the relationship is stronger than ever before. The history of U.S.-Mexico relationship makes Secretary Bárcena's role critical to the continued development of the United States and Mexico's strong and enduring relationship. And with that, I will turn this over to Jason Marzak, Senior Director of the Adrienne Arsht Latin America Center, who will moderate this conversation with the Secretary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adrienne. And Secretary Bárcena, welcome again to the Atlantic Council and welcome to our TV as well as our in-studio audience. Before we begin our conversation, I'd like to turn over to you, Madam Secretary, for a presentation you have on some of the different tenets and priorities of the U.S.-Mexico relationship, and then we'll engage in a question and answer on aspects of that presentation and other items.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be here today in the Atlantic Council. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Adrienne. And thank you all for being here and those who are connected. It's a delight for me, a great honor to be here today. And just what I wanted to say is because I'm sure you're going to ask me something that I think is very relevant. I have 13 months, 20 days, and probably 2 hours to remain as Foreign Affairs Secretary. So at least in the current administration. But what are the 5 things that I think we are really focusing on and deliverables that I think we should get? Macroeconomic and geopolitical indicators of Mexico are very good. And I want to admit and recognize that many of your associates, like the private sector, we just had a discussion with Walmart and with some others, and Amazon and other companies. And let me tell you something. You know, the people that receive the benefit of a basic basket at good prices went from 70 million to the people that didn't have access to basic products, where 70 million were not able to get the food they need, the basic basket. And now it went down to 15 million. So that means that we improved the lives of 2 million at least. It's not enough. We have still a great challenge. But I wanted to mention these 5 things. What are the macroeconomic and social indicators that we're dealing with, the key projects of the Mexican government, and what we have achieved with the U.S. is very important. We have a bilateral relationship on topics like economy, security, migration or human mobility, climate change. And what are we going to do with the bicentennial relationship? And let me just give some figures, but I'm not going to go into detail. But one figure that I think I must highlight is this semester, the trade between the two countries went up to $400 billion, only trade. Now, when we go to investment, you see the United States is one of our major investors in Mexico. And I think we have a productive structure that has been so much integrated. And the opportunities of nearshoring, I think, are there. So we should take pride of that. There are 3 projects that I want to just highlight, Jason, very quickly, because one of the things that López Obrador has done is to move from the northern part of Mexico to the southern part of Mexico development. And that is to integrate internally Mexico. And I think this is very important. And we have 3 main, I would say, mega projects that I hope will be of interest for everybody. We have the details, the Sonora Plan, the Maya Train, and the Trans-Isthmus Corridor, which are opportunities for investment, for employment, and for improving the lives of people. Finally, let me tell you something that I think is so important. And that is, for the first time, and this is unprecedented, Mexico and the U.S. have engaged in a conversation for an orderly, safe, regular, and humane migration. I think this is unprecedented. Yeah. We have opened up regular pathways and legal pathways for labor mobility for more than 177,000 people with humanitarian permits, 170,000 people with CBP-1, 2 new pathways in terms of orderly, safe. We are talking about 350,000 people. And the temporary work visas that we have are amazing. So I think we should be very proud of it. What are the challenges we have ahead? In our case, arms trafficking. We need your help. We need the help of the U.S. to make sure that arms and guns are not coming our way, because that's the other side of the coin, we know, of other types of trafficking like drugs. And we need to make sure we can avoid that. And finally, what are the shared multilateral commitments we can engage between the U.S. and Mexico with the world? And one of them is climate change, no question about it. We have multilateral commitments that are shared. And of course, you find in the photograph John Kerry, your magnificent special envoy, with our President, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. So thank you so much for hosting me today and for allowing me just to give you a quick overview of where we are today.
Well, thank you, Madam Secretary. That's an excellent quick overview. We'll start off. You've been Foreign Secretary now for over a month now, and I know you've already traveled extensively. We were commenting before that we were both in Brussels at the same time a few weeks ago around the EU CELAC summit. You outlined a number of priorities in your presentation. As well, we'll say maybe you have, we'll say, nearly 14 months, so we don't have to, we'll not count the hours and minutes. What do you hope to accomplish 14 months from now? If we're having this conversation, what would you like to say that you've achieved as Foreign Secretary within those priorities that you outlined and perhaps others?
First of all, on the economic front, I think to be able to bring certainty and to be able to engage in a intersectoral, first in Mexico and then with the U.S. and Canada on the USMCA. I think that's very important to consolidate this very important economic framework and to make sure that even if I'm leaving, let's say, or we are leaving in 13 months, that this can remain as a powerful, we have to pave the way for a powerful mechanism of trade and investment and economic development and partnership. With social inclusion, by the way, and sustainability, which I don't think is easy, but we have to achieve it. Secondly, I would like to achieve, and that's why I was in Europe, I hope we will be able to sign the global agreement with Europe, the modernized global agreement. So in the economic front, I think these 2 things for us are very important. And of course, internally in Latin America and the Caribbean, we would like to engage in a more powerful integration process with trade and investment. So that's the economic front. On migration, I think we want to consolidate these legal pathways that we have opened up with the U.S. to make sure that they are there and to explore other mechanisms that could be of interest. Let's say, for example, for workers that want to come to the U.S., not necessarily to stay, but to work temporarily, how can we open up more opportunities for them together with the companies, I would say, with the private sector. Secondly, I think we can talk a little bit more about what are we going to do with those people that got stuck in Mexico after the end up of the Title 42. So these are the things that I'm coming here to discuss, particularly with Secretary Mayorkas, with Secretary Blinken. Thirdly, on security, I think what we want is to engage thoroughly on the drugs matter. I mean, we know fentanyl is a priority for the U.S. and the abuse of fentanyl. I mean, your people are being killed in a way. I mean, 100,000 young people, we heard from 14 years old to 50 years old that are being killed because of the overdoses of fentanyl. So we need to work on that. It's beyond who produces or what happens. We need to work together because this is a global problem. So the global coalition on synthetic drugs that Tony Blinken is pulling together is something that we really want to participate. Mm-hmm. So migration, security, and the other thing is how can we work on I would say, on these institutional mechanisms that we have created to advance on that in terms of the bicentennial relationship. So we're talking about economy, security, human mobility, and of course climate change, which is another of the issues, or environmental matters, let's put it more broadly, because it's climate, it's water, it's oceans, it's plastic. What are the things that we can collaborate and we can enhance our participation?
So, Madam Secretary, with those priorities, that means it's going to be a very busy, nearly 14 months for you. Let me move to the border, a topic that, of course, gets a lot of interest here on the U.S. side and on both sides. And we show historically that the border relationship is not a one side; it's a two-sided relationship. It's very much a federal, of course, at a local level as well, and a state level as well, bordering Mexican states on the U.S. side, on the Mexican side, and the U.S. side as well. At the Atlantic Council, we've done work over the last couple years. We've shown that just a 10-minute reduction in border wait times would lead to the creation of nearly 19,000 Mexican jobs, just 10 minutes, and would have a positive annual impact of 5.4 million on the U.S. economy. We're, again, just talking about 10 minutes. So, taking that into account, what new areas of cooperation do you see at the U.S.-Mexico border to further facilitate that commerce, investment, and the opportunities for even further advancing our productive integration between the two economies?
Well, definitely, I think infrastructure is one of them. We have to make sure that we are able to build the bridges and the infrastructure that is needed in the border. Water is another of the priority, of course. And indeed, I think we have to facilitate and make sure that we understand what is the difference between those who are seeking for jobs or for trade or for investment, and differentiate that or decouple that type of movement in the border from the other part, which is more related, let's say, to illicit traffic or whatever. So I think we are getting quite organized, I guess, in terms of the border, and that's why I think the conversation with DHS is so important. Mm-hmm. We have been discussing today and yesterday how best we can enhance our infrastructure in the border, investment in the border, and make sure that we facilitate the movement of goods, services, and basically people, but people that want to work and that want to contribute to the three economies. Yeah. And I'm talking here not only about the U.S.-Mexico, I'm talking also about Canada, because we have this trilateral mechanism where we can, and how to decouple in a way migration from security, I think, is another of the challenges we have ahead of us.
And as we look at the security aspect, of course, as you were mentioning beforehand, fentanyl is a major topic of major concern here in the United States, as well as unauthorized migration. Just yesterday, your counterpart, Secretary Blinken, announced the designation of 3 Sinaloa cartel members involved in illicit trafficking of fentanyl and other deadly drugs. When you talk about working together on the U.S. and Mexican side to improve the security situation at the border, what specifically does that look like for you? And so far as additional steps that could be taken, both from Mexico, but also what would you aspire to be further areas of focus from the U.S. side as well?
Well, first of all, I have to say that the President López Obrador and President Biden have a very close relationship, and that helps a lot. Because they talk to each other, and we have these mechanisms that are working very well. On fentanyl, let me tell you that we are part of the global coalition on synthetic drugs that was established by Tony Blinken. And what are we doing? in Mexico. We have clear instructions by President López Obrador, and basically the Navy, the head of the Navy, Army, and of course the head of health, COFEPRIS. What are we doing? We establish a system, and when I say we, it's Mexico, them, for tracing the whole value chain of synthetic drugs. And the first thing we're going to do is to control the precursors of the synthetic drugs. Where are they coming from? We don't produce precursors, but we receive them. So we need to follow up from the beginning to the end, the whole process. Now, the problem with the precursors of synthetic drugs is they come in very, let's say, difficult formats to trace, you know, because it's not containers. We're talking about sometimes, you know, a package, a small thing. So, but we are putting together a digital tracking system that is very sophisticated and very interesting. And the most important controls that we are setting up are in the coastal areas, in the ports of entry. This is happening both in the coastal areas and in the border. And that's where we are collaborating quite a bit between Mexico, the US, but also Canada, because Canada also has a problem. And sometimes these precursors are not coming through Mexico. They're coming directly even to the US, and they are going to Mexico. So we have to control not only the ports of entry from Mexico to the US, but from the US to Mexico too. So that's something we need to improve, I mean, jointly, of course, but this is something that DHS also needs to help us with, because it's not only drugs that are trafficking, but it's arms, it's guns, and many things that are precisely the other side of the coin of these delictive criminal gangs.
And I think it's important as we're looking at this to continue, as we do here at the Atlantic Council, look at the border as an opportunity as well, which I think it's generally looked at as more of the challenge of the border, but the economic potential that the border brings, especially as we're looking at issues like nearshoring. Your presentation mentions the fact that Mexico is poised to potentially capture nearly 50% of nearshoring potential projected for Latin America. And actually earlier this summer, also transmitted live via C-SPAN with Senators Cassidy and Bennett, co-sponsored the Bipartisan Americas Act. We had an event where we talked about the importance of nearshoring and also announced a new Atlantic Council working group focused on that, looking at both the push and the pull factors to bring further investment into the region. From your perspective, what will be some of the primary policies that you'd like to be able to move forward that could further put Mexico on the map, to incentivize more U.S. investment in Mexico at this critical moment, at this moment in which there is really this real urge for companies to look specifically at the near abroad of the United States to be able to move more investments here back to our own region?
Well, basically, I think there's a lot of opportunities to bring nearshoring companies. I mean, we know that many companies in Asia Pacific are interested in coming to the U.S. or to Mexico, to Canada, to the North American region, because I would like to talk about a North American productive region, you know, that we have to integrate much better, as you say, in the border, but also in many fronts. So policies that are related to security, to migration, but also to incentives to invest in the infrastructure in the border, but also to invest and that's why I see the President López Obrador, what he's doing is to invest in the southern part of Mexico, to bring opportunities, not only for the northern part of Mexico, for the whole Mexican country. But the other thing is we need to focus also on the structural causes of human mobility. We need to invest not only in Mexico, US, and Canada, but also in Central America, for example. We need to invest in the places where the origin of human flows is coming from. So I guess that we have a tremendous opportunity but we have to give, of course, rules, clear rules, enforcement of our USMCA. Somebody was talking about that. Yes, the three countries, we have to work on how best we consolidate these mechanisms and instruments that we have created.
Especially as we are just past the halfway point of the first 6 years of the USMCA agreement. Now, as Mexico's foreign secretary, I'd like to focus on regional and global issues you mentioned as well. Regionally, yesterday there was a tragic assassination in Ecuador of the presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio a cowardly act in Ecuador. A tragedy that really reflects the incredible security challenge that country faces. So I'd like to give you an opportunity to comment on yesterday's events in Ecuador as Mexico's foreign secretary.
Well, we are very sorry. We regret enormously the situation that happened in Ecuador yesterday, and I spoke with the Foreign Affairs Minister, just conveying to them our condolences and how best we can really collaborate to bring back some sort of stability. We went through this at some point in Mexico, in 1984 when Colosio was killed. Yeah. So we know that how difficult this can be, and and security is I would say that security or the lack of security is happening in many places, not only in our countries, but in the whole region. The whole region is confronting a security problem, and I think we have to, that's why we need to collaborate. Mm-hmm. We need hemispheric approaches to security, for example. We cannot, nobody alone is going to solve this problem. So my view would be that, and of course, what we are confronting in Latin America, and I think in this country too, is political polarization. That's not helping. Yeah. That's not helping. We need to confront democracy in a different way. It's not about polarization and confrontation that we're going to get out of this situation.
I couldn't agree with you more. One topic that we focus a lot of attention here at the Atlantic Council as well from a global perspective is Ukraine and the ongoing conflict, Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Last week, Mexico announced that it's ready to collaborate in peace talks regarding Ukraine. How would that collaboration potentially unfold?
Well, first of all, we want to be very clear. Mexico is really very, very voiceful, and we want to make sure that everybody understands that we are totally against the Russian invasion to Ukraine in terms of the violation of the UN Charter. So that's for sure. Now, next step is we need to stop talking about war and start talking about peace. And these arms that are going constantly to Ukraine are not going to help because the conflict is going to be worse and worse. So the position of Mexico is peace talks. Let's go for peace. Let's sit down, and the two parties preferably, sit down and let's find a way of establishing clear rules, and I would say even ceasefire, or cease of hostilities. If we cannot achieve ceasefire, at least cease of hostilities. We need to make that happen because the whole world is suffering for this. So that's our position. That's how we would like to help. We know that there was an important meeting in Saudi Arabia. We hope that this will continue. We will be in that discussion in the future, preferably if the two parts are there. This is our position.
Well, Secretary Bárcena, again, thank you for coming here to the Atlantic Council for your these public comments as part of your first official trip here to Washington, D.C. Glad the August weather could cooperate here in Washington. I want to also again acknowledge our respective ambassadors here in the in-studio audience, Ambassador Montezuma, Ambassador Salazar. Thank you so much for joining us, and of course, Adrian Arch for kicking us off. You have the continued commitment from the Atlantic Council and the Adrian Arch Latin America Center to do everything in our capacity to further advance U.S.-Mexico ties, seeing this as an incredible opportunity to further strengthen this incredibly important relationship and partnership between our two countries.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to present our priorities and also to present my team, who is here with me, Roberto Velasco, whom you know, of course, and Martin Borrego, who's around there, I suppose, and Cristina, who's also here with us. We are here, and of course, Ambassador Montezuma, and I have to say, Ken Salazar is ambassador to both countries, I think. Isn't he? He's the binational ambassador. So thank you very much, Jason, Adrian, and all of you for being present today here.
Thank you.
Thank you.